There we go. Great. All right. Looks like we are live. Thanks everyone for joining another episode of the OpenJS Foundation's Cross Project Council meeting. Today is the last day of January in the year 2023. I will say hi on the stream and we'll get things started. Do we have any announcements?
We had our ticket sales go live for OpenJS World Open Source Summit on January 25th, so just a few days ago. And then February 5th, deadline for CFPs. How many of you have your CFPs submitted? Come on.
No, I want to.
I know they're rolling in, and we've got a great program committee. So great, in fact, that they created their own video to promote the event. So if you've not seen it, check it out on our Twitter handle. It's amazing. There's some cameos. Giuseppe's a cameo. Kylie's in there and Abby. So yeah, so it's pretty fun.
Cool. Exciting. Yeah, February 5th is coming up really fast. I gotta put something together.
You don't say.
Yeah. This year is flying by already. Cool. That's exciting. Any other announcements? No. Okay, good. Anything anything on the board meeting or anything like that? Was that recently? Was that last week?
Always third Friday of the month. How we remember.
So was it last week or was it the week before? I guess
Before. It's been a long, did we say it was a long month?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, with that, we'll just kind of jump into the agenda. The first one on the list here is issue 982. And for folks, I think everybody's got the link, but I'll drop the minutes here in the chat. This first issue is determine a review process. We've talked about this a little bit. Luke started a doc. We've got some questions in here and some comments. So I think that this is moving forward. I don't know if we want to talk about this at all or just keep it in the doc. But I think the expectation is we'll flesh something out here and then hopefully send something out in a few weeks. Cool. All right, good. Well, we will keep that going, but for everyone who wants to participate, take a look in the issue and help us flesh that out. Cool.
Actually, if I may, Sean, since you would be on the receiving end of something like this, like your input would be great to hear. The idea is to do a survey of the different projects and the foundation, and sort of like send questions to the maintainers to better assess sort of like how the foundation can better understand what kind of relationship we want to build, essentially. And so you're muted.
You were talking about 982, correct? Just to make sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
In particular, there's a bunch of questions in a Google Doc that's linked at the bottom of the thing.
Yeah, and I have I pasted them in the chat if that's easier too. And
okay.
Not to put you on the spot, Sean, either that you like need to, but I guess
I didn't mean to get you to answer this right now, but I was just
yes,
it's great to have broader input, and when you start asking questions, it's good to ask the questions a number of times so you can sort of like refine the questions as you go.
Yes.
And so given that we sort of like do this within a smaller circle of people, I just jumped on the occasion to put you on the spot.
That's great. That's great. No problem. So do you want me to answer these questions or give you feedback on the questions themselves?
The latter.
Okay. How are you with the services you receive from the foundation? I think that's a good question. I think most people might be like, well, I guess it depends on the project, right? Some might be like, what services are you talking about? And that'll be helpful for us if they say that. How responsive do you find the foundation to the concerns of your project? I think maybe one question that isn't here is like, do you know like how to reach us? Like, do you know the right communication channels?
Yeah,
I think probably if you ask all the projects that, they might not know that answer, especially if like maintainers are cycling in and out. So maybe
Thank
that's
you.
one question you should add. Like, do you know how to reach us? Are you aware there are communication channels that like you'll get a fast response from?
Yeah. And Luke's, thank you, Luke, for capturing some of these.
You have a good understanding of the resources provided by the foundation. Yeah, I think that's good. Do you know how to access the resources provided? How likely are you to? I mean, I think these are great. Like, these are good. Like, we would call this at Microsoft good NSAT questions, right? For like, typical satisfaction. So I think this is cool. I think that was the only one that stuck out to me, which is like, is there a way, like, how would I reach you? And do you know how to do that? Do you know how to reach us, etc.? So I think that's my feedback.
And I
Thanks, that's
wonder
great.
about, yeah, thank you, Sean. I wonder about a question, with sort of a text field that was just like, what could we be doing better?
Yeah,
I was
think-
thinking the same thing, an open-ended question. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's great.
excellent.
Are these going to be anonymous or is it going to be not anonymous?
That's a good question.
Because you typically, if we provide like an open feedback form, if it's like a text box, anonymous will surely probably provide more feedback than if it is not anonymous. But at the end of the day, I don't think there's a wrong way to go about it.
And I've seen too where it's like anonymous by default, but if you are open to being
Yes.
reached out to, then please provide your email or whatnot.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Good, but I think that's great. Let's do that. I
Yeah.
like the opt into a further conversation or yell in the void anonymously, if that's your preferred option.
Yeah, yeah.
Not in the void. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to imply anything. No, seriously.
Yes, no, we want to know. We want to know. Cool. All right, great. Well, that's helpful. Excellent. So the next item on the list here is issue 957. What are these repos? I actually closed this a little bit earlier today because we had talked about it last time. I left it open to put a note in there, and I did. I think that's fair now. The repos are a little bit better. We archived some. We have better descriptions. And so I think this issue is pretty good. The next one on the list is funds for project-driven initiatives. And I think that Claudio opened a PR for this one, which is, no, that's the commit. I thought I had it open here somewhere.
It's 999.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So there is some copy there already, if folks want to take a look at it. And we can kind of move this forward. I know that in this PR, there have been a bunch of comments already, Toby and Matteo. So it's great that this is being fleshed out.
Yeah, I think it's moving forward well. Like I think the only I think like sort of the only thing that's really left to do is kind of format the thing a little bit more, to have like more body and less of an FAQ. And it's just and I think then we're pretty much good to ship this.
Yeah, I don't know, because I think it's meant to be not super detailed in the body, right? We're kind of leaving it a little bit open.
Oh yeah. No, I mean that was just let's not have like a discussion about like the finding. My point was this has moved forward quite a bit. I think it's towards good enough.
Yeah. Well, I am gonna put my thumb on it. Awesome. So and does this, yep, closes 9:53. So once we get that going, that'll be great. And then we can work on that further if we decide to later on. Cool. Where's my agenda? Great. So next up is add patching scripts for the COC modifications. And this is the thing that I dropped into the Slack earlier. There is a PR open. I'm trying to find where that one is now. If somebody else beats me to it, I'll just go to pull requests. This is 972. Yagiz has done a ton of great work on this. There's been commentary and comments addressed, I believe. So and there's some stuff from not that long ago too.
Can you just update us?
Yeah.
Sorry, can either one of you just update us on which part of this is? Because
can
you repeat that again? Yeah, I didn't understand the question. Sorry.
Just kind of a general overview. So I think this is the patching script.
Yeah. So we merged the commit of the first initial part of it, and then this pull request just adds the GitHub workflow runner. That's the basis of the patching script. The only thing that I did manually was that in order to make sure that we have the current version of the code of conduct, I created a patch file from the old one. And the red ones that you see in the patch file in my pull request is the latest 2.1 version of code of conduct, and the green ones are our current version. So if you want to update them in the features, then we can just delete those lines and update it to 2.1.
And for more context for Sean and others who maybe don't have it, the idea was to make this updating the code of conduct easier, even though it's been a bit of a hurdle to get this going. But when we update to a patch or whatnot, we have a bit of templating kind of around it that's OpenJS specific. And so we want it to be sort of automatic. We can update it and then this patch runs and the action runs and it works out. I see some comments from Jordan, Yagiz. Does it look like we've got a little bit more work to do? And then
yeah, so there was a miscommunication, I guess. So I didn't over-engineer, but I implemented something that's much more complex than what he asked, and yeah, I need to roll back a couple of comments and release a new version in the GitHub workflow, and can be done in like a half an hour.
Okay, great, awesome. So maybe we'll ping the Slack channel again when it's ready to move forward, and we'll kind of keep this progress going. We have another open PR that's been around for a really long time that will be closed once we get this stuff in place, so that'll be great. Any questions or further comments on this particular one? If not, the next item on the list is the PR that I'm talking about. That's 851. That's let me just open it to make sure I'm correct here. The one that Ben had opened up, about the COC back in March of last year. So it'll be great once we get this all in place and can close this one too. Excellent. Cool. So the last couple on the list then here, license check, support, and tooling. I imagine this is still kind of in a holding pattern. I checked this morning that IBM license scanner has been donated to OWASP. It's in the Cyclone DX org, but it remains private at the moment. I think they're kind of updating a couple of files or something before they make it public. So that'll be
checking licenses.
Yeah.
In it?
And it's actually a legal scanner too. Like I think it does a few different things around that. Yeah.
This was a meta joke about checking the licenses in the license checking tool. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Sometimes I'm slow. So cool. That'll be hopefully available soon. And then we'll kind of coordinate with LF and see what we need to do to move stuff like this forward. Cool. And then last one is issue 786 and clarify requirements around COC violation. Toby, I know you've got this list here. I think the expectation is that once we get some of the other code of conduct stuff in place. And some of the other stuff updated that we did recently, that we would kind of look back at this list and see if we got everything done and what else maybe has come up since then.
That wasn't the expectation, but I like that framing a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, it's taking the pressure off, you know. We're just
Yeah. I
yeah.
like that.
Because there was some things that I think on this list that we did work
No,
on.
there is. You're right. We have to do some sort of like cross-checking to see what's missing and what isn't.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
And I think, you know, this does kind of and this is the last issue in the agenda, but it does sort of lead into you know, the conversations that we've been having around the moderation panel and how many people are on it and voting and all of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I don't know if we really want to prepared to get into that right now. I'll try to actually.
Don't know either, because I actually was not at the last session on the topic.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess that's something we haven't talked about, but the last working session, which I think we primarily worked on the first chunk of work that Yagiz had been working on in terms of getting the template in place for the code of conduct, and we had to do that work before we got the patching work done. So I think we primarily worked on that. Yeah. Am I crazy? I thought that we had a PR open. Oh, is it this changes to the COC requirements? This is PR 984. Yeah, this is it, right? I'll share this.
Well, this one is precisely the one about the panel team thing, right?
Yeah. And I see your comment, all caps. Oh my God, not more voting.
I mean, what sort of happened, if I remember correctly, in that PR is it turned into like an issue where we started discussing sort of things that should have been discussed in an issue, and we probably should sort of bring that back and have a conversation about it. It probably should be in sort of like our weekly things. Maybe we should talk about it now, actually.
Yeah, I'm open
Because
to talking
we
about it
should
now.
make decisions about this.
Yeah.
And sort of like clarify this whole thing.
We have about 20 minutes until Sarah gets back, and we'll go to a private session for the board slides. I think that what we're trying, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone here on the call, I think that what we're trying to balance is having a code of conduct moderation panel for OpenJS and the Cross Project Council that will largely be for escalations, I believe. And we're trying to not have it be too big, because we've had an issue in the past where we had too many people and we had an urgent issue, and it was very difficult to get like any consensus and get a meeting, and it was really challenging, versus having a smaller panel. And I think the issue with the smaller panel is that if you limit it, then you might end up voting, and we are trying to avoid voting. You know, so I think the ideal number that we had talked about in some of the previous conversations was like executive director, someone from like a marketing committee or marketing team, because of the events, things often happen at events, and then 3 other people from the CPC or community related folks. But when you have 3, you know, we already have 4 people that have sort of stepped up, so we could make it 4. Or we could vote, or, you know, that's kind of, I think, the thing that we're running into here. And I appreciate, Toby, all that you put down in there about creating a diverse panel. And I think that that's a fantastic goal that we should keep in mind. But I'm trying to figure out the other 2 things, that how we remedy that. And somebody else commented too about having people on the escalation team, this panel, that are not part of the projects, that would be an issue in some regard. There's a lot of comments here.
Yeah, we should probably do some kind of, I mean, come through this pull request and figure out like what are the different things that we need to make decisions about. Because for example, on the size of, and there's also another open issue where some people have like raised their hands to sort of volunteer for this.
Yeah, that's what happened.
And like on the size, for example, I think some folks that have a lot of experience in dealing with this kind of stuff actually had like things to say about what size a panel like that should have. And I have like little to no experience in that field. And I just would like folks who have handled these issues and have been in those things to just like be listened to and make those decisions, right?
Robin?
Yeah, and we have someone at the Linux Foundation whose role it is to sort of help facilitate some of these code of conduct panels, and I thought it might be nice to have her come to as a guest for a working session. We actually, as a foundation, don't have a lot of experience because we don't have a lot of code of conduct violations. It's been, very rare. So hearing from others, it's probably be a wise thing to do. But logistically speaking, yes, having 12, herding cats in different time zones on urgent things just logistically would be hard. Not that we wouldn't value everyone's input, but.
Well, so two things I'm thinking about. Number one, can we get somebody like that and maybe some others into the next week's working session? Should we plan to do that? So that's maybe something to shoot for, which would be next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And then secondly, if we want to take, the next 19 minutes and talk about that one particular challenge, or do we think we need to wait and speak with someone who has more experience? And when I say one particular challenge, I'm talking about the size of the group and how we manage filling that, or if it exceeds the limit, or what we do. I know, Tierney, you had mentioned, the consensus and no explicit objections, and I agree that's worked great for Node in the past. I feel like Node has a lot of like day-to-day sort of moderation, and so that really makes sense. Oh, you're muted, Tierney.
I totally disagree with that. There's like very little day-to-day moderation. A lot of the actions that happen are actually just a moderator doing something and logging it. But that is separate from like COC process.
Yeah.
And so like when a COC violation or something in that vein, right, like dispute or something like that comes up, that is when that kicks in. A lot of in Node people, like with the moderation stuff, like when it's like a bot, right, it's like very obvious that it's a bot. Although that might be a separate topic that I'm going to talk about from Electron. You just delete it, right? Like everyone is empowered to just take that action. And I think specifically how Node codifies that is like, if this is a person that's not a member, and then like you go and do reasonable search, like you go through their GitHub profile. There were many times where we went through someone's profile. It's like, they've been making the same comment on 15 different major repos. Like this is very clearly spam, or it's just like a nonsense comment with a default like avatar. Like that stuff is day to day. But the actual like hard work was maybe, I mean, early on it was once every 3 months, and it got to the point where it was like once a year.
And I'm
it
sorry,
was because
that's
of
what
that
I meant
structure.
was those little
Yeah, and so I just wanted to differentiate that. The little moderation stuff happens constantly in Node, as it does, I assume, in like every big project, but the bigger like dispute stuff happens much less. And so that's where that model comes in of like,
And so how does the Node project handle that if there's a sizable number of folks? I mean, I think there's what, 7 to 10 or something. If there is a code of conduct report, that they want to act on quickly, do they have to have everybody in, or is it?
No, usually with that stuff, usually like not one person, but like getting like 3, 4, because there was like time zones, right? We had someone in Tokyo, we had someone, I think we had 2 people in Tokyo, we had someone like middle of Europe, right? And so there's like time zone overlap. And when something's, there's like 3 types of violations, right? There's the very obvious ones, right, where like, I don't know, you're thing gets posted to 4chan and it's a bunch of eggplant emojis, right? Like that's one. There's 4 types. That's one. There's like a very obvious, egregious, violation that's like, cool, we can act on this. The hard one is the middle ground where it's like, this is like, we need to like talk about this and figure out like, is this actually a violation? Basically, you're like legislating it and like you're doing policy, policy building in that moment. And then the other one is like, someone reported this. This isn't really a thing. Like this is just someone interacting. It's not actually like, either it's a bad faith report or it's like not, it's someone misunderstanding. And so that third one there is the hard one. And that's the one where it'll be like challenging and you'll want to involve more people, but like the scale of those is like, the 4chan stuff is obviously like you turn on org security and you lock it down. The second one, which is like an obvious violation, one person can generally handle that, but like take an action quick, and that's when it's easy to take an action. And then the second one, or the third one, sorry, where it's like a gray area or harder, that's when you kind of have to involve multiple people. And like maybe for the one prior to that, where it's like, obvious, you involve 2 people, right? Like there's some level of checking with other people who are online or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, what you're saying, Tierney, I mean, you said many things, but one of the things that's important here. No, I'm not. That was a good thing. That was not a bad thing. But one of the things that strikes me is, the fact that you can be like 12 people in the group is unrelated to how many people can be empowered to make a decision.
Yep.
Right.
Totally.
And so you want as many people as needed to sort of like cover the time zones, I'm assuming is what you're suggesting.
That was what we did. We didn't have perfect time zone coverage. And honestly, like I'm up till 5 a.m. most days. So like I ended up covering stuff at 1 a.m. sometimes. Right. And it's just like time zone coverage is weird and hard. I would say like 20 people is probably too many. 15 is probably a good, like very healthy amount. And 7 to 12 is like you're green, you're perfect, and then like you need more than 5. I think you need at least 5. Like 5 is the minimum. I would say. Interesting.
Kubernetes has 3, and so curious, yeah, for a big project as well. So
that one, I mean, the thing I am always cautious about with this is like effectively corporate open source to some extent, right? Whether or not it's under a company, like the members who are participating are all corporate to some extent, and they're disambiguating from like corporate allegiance, right? And like that can show up accidentally or in some ways, right? Like I still have a lot of friends at Microsoft, right? And so like being able to like have other people like have their opinions, or the opposite of like, well, this group is same dynamics in like the CPC and TSC, right? It's like you need to remove that political structure and like bad blood that can happen there. And so I think 3 is scary. That's that. And also like, cool, what if 2 of them are at the same conference, right? Because there's a very high likelihood that they're going to do that. The third person has nothing to do. They can't actually go reach out to someone, right? So I like having the extra buffering there quite a bit.
Well, and what we're looking at too is 3 plus 2, so 5 at a minimum, which I think is good.
They're all good points.
Yeah. Michael?
I'm just going to add, we've never had a problem of too many people volunteering.
Yes, that's very true.
So like, if we're talking 3 or 4 here, I do like the comment from, I think it's Benjamin, in that like the self-moderate, the moderator self-nominate, there needs to be no objections because it's a very high bar, and then it's recertified once a year. That approach has worked pretty well, I think, for the node project. Like I said, we've never had like 100 people nominate, so it's been a reasonable number. And along with Tierney's point that it's not a decision by that whole group, it's usually a decision by some subset who's available, right? So if you factor that in, then until we have too many volunteers, and even that would probably be a good problem. I don't know if it's worth like artificially limiting it and having to vote to Toby's point, right?
Yeah, well, I think having something in place that makes it clear that while we may have 8 members on the team or whatever, that you know, the minimum number is X, and when something happens, there's immediately an email that goes out. People need to raise their hand that they are going to make time and be available to work on this, and then we can work with a smaller group, which I think is.
I would also recommend do not do email. Email is like too slow and it's too easy to miss. I would recommend having a Slack channel for it. Like we already have a Slack. That's how the node moderation team has their own Slack org. They don't even have a team. They have like an org that got paid for by Slack. And that was super vital. In like there were a number of channels. I mean, there's the main channel, and then there's like a logging channel, just where like everyone, when they did something, right? Like when random person went and deleted a comment, right? You just put that in there, and like that serves as a log. I would not recommend maybe reporting as much as the moderation team did, just because it's a long drone to sit there and listen to someone list that they deleted 15 bot comments in a meeting. Like there's no reason to do that. Maybe like text is fine, but no reason to do it synchronously.
Yeah, and I think in our situation, you know, we're not going to have that same sort of drumbeat of or activity. So I think that's fun.
But yeah, I would definitely recommend having a logging channel that's like separate just for logging, and private, of course, and also a general chat for them to talk in. Because like sometimes you have to have discussions about stuff. Also, sometimes you need to like schedule stuff, right? And so it's like, yeah, it was useful. Also, we did originally have meetings monthly. Realistically, those we kind of ended up not needing those. They weren't helpful. Like there wasn't anything to do in them. So it like happened occasionally when we had something to talk about, but that was like once every 6 months. So
okay. Yeah. All right, that's all very helpful. And I kind of like this, you know, direction, because then we can think about, Toby, what you had suggested and trying to build a diverse panel and stuff. Robin, do you have any thoughts or concerns about some of these thoughts?
No, I like it also, you know, if you've worked on one of the harder code of conduct challenges, it's also very time consuming too. So I think it helps folks sort of share the burden a little bit.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay. So theoretically we have about 8 minutes until Sarah gets back. What do we want to do for next working session? Is that something, do we want to hack on this some more and shape some language, or does somebody want to take a stab at that asynchronously? Or I guess that's sort of 2 questions. What do we want to do with the next working session? And what do we want to do about these thoughts we've been talking about, getting them formalized? Toby?
My understanding was you had suggested that we would do something if Robin was able to get the person in the foundation that's working on that stuff in the next session.
Thank you for reminding me that I forgot from 5 minutes ago. Yeah, do we want to do that? I mean, there's certainly more that we could talk about in terms of just general code of conduct and moderation and things like that. What do you think, Robin?
I think we're getting close to consensus here, but having another point of view is probably maybe helpful. Maybe some things we haven't thought about. So maybe for half of it.
Yeah, let's see if they're available. We can also, Agiz has been doing this great work on some of the patching stuff, which we can also, I consider a part of that. We can look at these other, the checklist that Toby has from that other issue. We can so generally work on code of conduct and have these few things that we can have on the agenda.
Yeah, and there's like a last. Oh, sorry, Robin. I didn't mean to. You're good. Yeah, there's a last thing that I think we sort of discussed and talked about a few times. I don't think we have like super clarity around it, around the code of conduct stuff. Is the panel is supposed to be for escalation, but it's also supposed to be for handling the project for a number of the projects to handle those, right? And so then we don't have, what does that mean if like those need to be escalated? Like we have to have some kind of like clarity as to whether there is no escalation path for those that don't have their own thing, or whether like there's a two-step process, and if so, what does that look like? Because that's also something where we don't want, like, I mean, we want clarity around this. So we don't have to discuss it now, but I think it's sort of like a pending issue that is not clearly documented anywhere.
Mhm. Michael?
I think the original content did have a separate group who was going to handle it for the CPC, and then the code of conduct panel was strictly the escalation process for that and from projects.
Yeah, we kind of merged those, I think.
Yeah, but the suggestion, I almost think you might have suggested, Kobe, that we don't need that one. We only need one.
Oh, I
could be
know, I do
remembering
agree
wrong,
that, no,
but-
I do agree that we only need one. I mean, like, clearly, I don't
Right.
want to be handling, like, I mean, I haven't put my hand up to do a panel, a code of panel monitoring, so I don't want everyone that's in the CPC to sort of like fall in the category of like, and now we're handling this for all of these projects, right? I mean, sure, if like, we need people and like there are no people, like, I'd consider whether I can like actually do that work. But like, I think that these should be the same group. I'm just saying, if they are the same group, then like it's no longer like we need to clarify whether they're escalation or not. So yeah, I'm not trying to roll back what I suggested. I'm trying to say, now that we agree that this is what we have to do, we have to refine this agreement a little bit for it to make sense.
Sarah's back. Welcome back, Sarah. I hope that your GNC or whatever it is
GCN. Yes.
is going great. So I'm gonna maybe just try to take a couple of quick notes on what we've been talking about in prep for next week's working session, and we'll share maybe in Slack or something to see if I missed anything. But we can switch to the board slides now if we'd like. Any objection to that, folks?
Just need to close out the public session.
Oh, that's a great idea. Let me do that.